Good evening, San Bernardino. Thank you guys for joining me, and welcome back to those who were just watching the live. So I will make sure that we are 100% back up and running, and then we will get to this very, very important topic. Okay, so if you have not heard, the injunction that was placed over the city in January of this year was signed or was lifted by the presiding judge on the 25th of this month. Now, as those of us who had discussions earlier were talking, yeah, this agreement has been signed for 5 days and no one has said a single word about it. So I waited. People in the city sometimes are like, oh, how you get stuff out before we do. Well, I gave you a week and you did nothing with it. So now, now we're going to have our discussion. And I want to show you guys everything that's in the court documents, the city's cleanup policy, and I want to go over the information that I received during a neighborhood association meeting, and not just me, but myself and 40 other residents have received. Because tomorrow, at I think like 9:30 or something in the morning, the city is going to give their update. They're going to give a press conference on all of this. And I'm going to tell you what I want you to be able to do. I want you to be able to look at the information yourself and then assess what the city is telling you. Because in reading the press release today, in looking at the documents, what I believe as the next council person of the 7th Ward, my sole, or one of my sole duties to the people I represent is to properly manage expectations. Because this city has been overpromised and under-delivered for decades. And that has allowed failure and disappointment to be second nature to us. And I don't think that's fair, especially when for years and years and years, residents have been coming forward, reaching out, contacting the city, contacting the state of California in an effort to address homelessness. And when I look at what has now been submitted to the court and what we were waiting on versus what's now going to be allowed to happen, I'm not impressed. And I'm trying to figure out why this took 10 months to complete. But we'll get to that. So first, I'm going to go through the court document, then we're going to go through the agreement. So I want you guys to know what was officially signed, and then the agreement and the policy that is going to be implemented. Because someone shared a clip with me to say like, oh, a councilwoman came out and said, we're going to be able to clean up the parks immediately. No, but I want you to know why the answer to that is no. And I want you to be able to challenge the information that you're being given, because the majority of council members have not even seen these documents, let alone the city policy. Okay, all right. So let's get into the agreement. Okay. All right. So this is the court document that is officially the signed order of dismissal that came out. And this is all the parties, okay? So here we go. This is from the judge. Having reviewed the joint stipulation and request for dismissal pursuant to the Federal Rule of Civil Procedures and good cause appearing therefore, it is hereby ordered. The preliminary injunction entered on January 12, 2024 in the above captioned lawsuit is hereby dissolved in its entirety. So the injunction is over. The court expressly incorporates all the terms of the agreement attached hereto as Exhibit A into this order, including all non-monetary terms and the terms of the exhibits attached to the agreement, which are also incorporated by reference, and hereby orders the parties to comply with all terms of the agreement and any further orders from this court in this matter. So what I'll show you is the agreement and the attachments, and everybody has to abide by them. By entering this order and incorporating all the terms of the agreement as agreed to by the parties, this court, A, approves the parties' written consent to proceed before Magistrate Judge Shashi H, I'm gonna get this wrong, Kurulami, we're just gonna go with magistrate. Or in the event of this judge's unavailability, another U.S. magistrate judge on the Central District of California's voluntary consent list that the parties agreed to. The magistrate expressly retains jurisdiction for a period of 3 years from the date of this order to enforce the agreement and to resolve any future disputes regarding interpretation, performance, or enforcement of the agreement, including and expressly the non-monetary terms set forth in this agreement and its exhibits as agreed to by the parties. So what this is saying is, in the first thing, it says that the injunction is completely dissolved. However, this particular magistrate, the court, the Central Court, District Court, now retains the ability of retains jurisdiction over this matter for 3 years. So anything that comes up, we're going right back to court, to the magistrate. Okay, for performance, interpretation, or enforcement, any disputes. For 3 years from the date of this order, which was 9/25, the parties shall comply with the dispute resolution procedures in the agreement to address any disputes related to this agreement. So it's already like pre-set up what they're gonna do. Except as provided otherwise in the agreement, each side shall bear their own fees and costs in this lawsuit. The lawsuit is hereby dismissed with prejudice. And this was so ordered and signed, like I said, September 25th. And we're hearing about it. Well, if you saw yesterday, the ACLU put out their press release. Today, the city's putting out their press release. But this was done on the 25th. So now let's evaluate what we have been waiting for 10 months. Here we go. Okay, the agreement resolving the dispute. So this agreement resolving dispute is entered into and by all the people that sued the city, which was James Tyson, Lenka John, Noel Harner, Charles Clayton, Melissa Jones, and SoCal Trash Army, an unincorporated association. Acting by and through its designated representatives, they're collectively the plaintiffs. And on the other hand, the City of San Bernardino, a municipal corporation, aka the city. The parties to this agreement are referred to herein individually as a party and collectively as parties. All right, so the recitals are basically, they tell you what happened. So in August 2nd of 2023, the original plaintiffs of Tyson, John, Harner, and SoCal Trash Army filed an action against the city. The action alleged that the city improperly seized and destroyed personal property, belongings to unhoused people, and that the city does not provide reasonable accommodations to unhoused people with disabilities during these cleanups and removals of the homeless encampments. This was not a class action, just because it's in here, so you guys know that. This action specifically alleged the following claims for relief. So this is what they said. There was discrimination against persons with disabilities, violating the American with Disabilities Act. Failure to provide reasonable accommodations to Americans with disabilities through the ADA. Intentional discrimination, deliberate indifference in violation of the ADA. Unreasonable seizure in violation of the Fourth Amendment. violation of due process in violation of the 5th and 14th Amendments, and failure to maintain unattended property of unhoused individuals. The city disputed each of these claims for relief in their entirety, and it further disputes the plaintiff's underlying legal contention. So basically what that means is the city's like, no, we didn't do that. That didn't happen. And they disputed it. On August 9th, 2023, the plaintiffs moved the court in a civil procedure for preliminary injunction, enjoining the city, so stopping the city from removing unhoused people and their property from the parks or other publicly accessible locations throughout the city of San Bernardino until the city established a lawful plan and implemented it to address unlawful processes they felt, policies, procedures, and methods alleged by this group. So on August 28th, 2023, the city opposed this injunction altogether and continued to deny the allegations. On October 18th of 2023, the city answered the original complaint. Then in November, the plaintiffs filed an amended complaint adding, among other things, allegations of encampment cleaning subsequent to the actions filing and updates. So remember, I want to be very clear about this because we tend to have this political amnesia. 2 years ago, when Rob Field was our city manager, BB&K, Thomas Rice, they went in and created a secret agreement with the ACLU on camp cleanups and put us in this awful position where 1 month before this agreement was set to expire, supposedly the PD went in to clean up an encampment, violated somebody's rights, and then this injunction came forward. Had BB&K, you guys, the city attorney's office that we pay millions and millions and millions of dollars to, and Robert Field not gone in and done this on the backs of the city council, we could possibly have never been in this position. So, just want to make sure we don't forget that part. Then in November 22nd of 2023, the city answered the first amended complaint. Then January 12th, on or about, the court granted, so they went to court and the court granted the preliminary injunction motion, and it ordered, pending the action's final resolution or further court order, the city is preliminary enjoined, so is restricted, from conducting any operations involving or related to the removal of unhoused people and or their attended and or unattended personal property from parks and other publicly accessible locations in the city. And that the court will consider vacating, so dissolving the preliminary injunction if the city crafts and presents a lawful revised policy regarding homeless encampment cleanup operations. And that revised policy is approved by the court. Now we're going to show you what they actually came up with. And you're going to tell me, I guess, if you thought this should have taken 10 months. On March 7th, the plaintiffs filed their first amended supplemental complaint, and plaintiffs Clayton and Jones as parties to the, and then added 2 more plaintiffs to this case. Then on March 25th, 2024, the city moved the court for an order dissolving or modifying the preliminary injunction, which plaintiffs opposed. The court took the matter under submission, and then on April 29th said, no, we're still going to hold on to the injunction. And then pursuant to the court orders, the parties participated in a full-day mediation session and on Saturday, June 15th, to discuss resolution. And then without admitting any wrongdoing, liability, or legal violations on the city's part, without conceding to the validity of any of the parties or the plaintiff's complaints, legal theories, or claims, for the sole purpose of resolving the action and any claims relating, in economic or efficient manner, The parties now desire to enter into this agreement on the terms set forth. So they're like, all right, cool, we're gonna agree to this. So this became effective the date the court signed it. And the citywide policy on encampment cleanups is finalized. So that's what you're gonna see in Exhibit A. And the finalized policy shall replace all prior versions and official policies of the City of San Bernardino related to the cleanup of encampments, and all prior versions of the draft of the finalized policy will be null void. And so this is what has to be followed. No ifs, ands, or buts. The parties agreed to execute a stipulation and proposed order of dismissal, which will include moving to dissolve the preliminary injunction in its entirety upon the complete satisfaction of the following terms. The city designates a coordinator pursuant to the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. So there has to now be an ADA coordinator. The city obtains a supply of trash bags, envelopes, and property tags with receipts pursuant to the finalized policy. The city trains its staff and its third-party contractor, Hope the Mission, regarding the finalized policy. The parties coordinate efforts as reasonably necessary to educate unhoused residents by creating and distributing a flyer to unhoused residents regarding the finalized policy and discussing it with them while distributing the flyer. Now, I want you to pay attention to E, because this is why I tell you nothing is happening tomorrow. The city agrees to provide at least 14 days notice to the plaintiff's counsel before the first large-scale park cleanup. So they have to provide 2 weeks notice before they can initiate the first cleanup in the park, which is defined as a cleanup impacting more than 10 or more individuals. After the effective date, the city agrees to provide at least a week's notice to the plaintiff's counsel before the scheduled date of the next 3 subsequent large-scale park cleanups, and at least 3 days notice to the plaintiff's counsel before the first 3 cleanups, not in city parks, that involve encampments impacting 5 or more individuals. And the city park is defined as an officially recognized parcel of land dedicated to the city or owned and managed by the city for public recreation. So this is why nothing will happen overnight. The city has agreed to 2 weeks, 1 week, 3 days notice. And that is not the 72-hour notice, which is still coming, by the way. This is letting the attorney know we are going to go into this camp in this next 2 weeks to clean it up. The parties agree on the content of the notice of any cleanups and the matter of distribution of said notice, and we'll look at that. And the parties coordinate or agree to coordinate meetings as necessary between the plaintiff's counsel and the city's third-party contractor, Hope the Mission, and city staff to implement this policy. So they're going to be working together with this. The ACLU or SoCal Trash Army and the plaintiff, they're not going away. The city shall provide the plaintiff's counsel written notice of its completion of these terms and conditions. Plaintiff's counsel shall respond to said written notice within 3 court days, subject to the plaintiff's approval regarding completion of these terms and conditions, which shall not be unreasonably withheld. The parties may file a aforementioned proposed order to the extent that there are any disputes regarding the plaintiff's approval of the city's performance under this paragraph. So basically, they're going to be watching and overseeing how the city implements this agreement. Okay. So we get into, so nothing in this agreement, this is a part that I believe the city is going to try and hang their hat on, because this is important. We wanted to make sure that we could restore law and order, restore the ability to effectively implement policing. So nothing in this agreement shall impact the city's right to enforce any law by issuing citations and arresting the person for an alleged violation of the law. Property seized pursuant to law enforcement shall be stored as required by law. So what I believe we'll hear is, oh yeah, if you're, if we close the parks and you're not there and they're still there, we can arrest them. If you're violating this, we can arrest them. That's what you're going to hear. But really, that's not how this is going to work, because there's an actual clause about policing and homelessness. So, but I have a feeling tomorrow that's going to be a big thing, because you're going to want to hear that we're 8 to 8. Parks will be 8 to 8. Well, we already saw you can't do that for at least 2 weeks, and the determination of where the cleanup is taking place. So if there are any disputes in this process, there's a resolution. The parties agree that the finalized policies implementation includes specific conditions, and then will resolve in any dispute resolution process. So if in the event any dispute arising from the termination date, the parties to that dispute will first attempt to meet and confer informally with each other in a side effort to resolve it. In case a dispute raised by one or more of the plaintiffs through their counsel, an attempt will at least involve a written communication from the parties. So first they want them to resolve it. If they can't, bring in the third party, and then if not, they're going back to court. So that will be interesting. And then release and covenant not to sue. The following releases shall become effective upon the city's payment of the resolution amount, litigation costs, and attorney fees. Please understand this, San Bernardino. This cost us $600,000 on top of the $600,000 we're going to have to allocate. So, and not counting what we paid any outside attorneys on our part. So roughly $1.2 million expended for this injunction on just the side of things. And you'll get to see that breakdown. So here we go. Parties agree to continuing jurisdiction and for 3 years. In consideration of this agreement and the promises set forth herein, the city shall pay 1. Plaintiffs collectively $200,000.00. The city shall pay the plaintiffs' counsel $76,000.00. And the city shall pay litigation costs and plaintiffs' counsel $350,000. So, like I said, $600,000. The city shall issue payment of the resolution amount and litigation costs and attorney fees within 30 calendar days. In lieu of any additional fees, within 2 years, the city will reinvest $600,000 in new city homelessness programs, and parties agree upon this additional funding shall be in addition to any funding the city has already planned or allocated to spend on homelessness programming prior to June 15th. So all of that pre-allocation we've done for the navigation center, for the 60 million, this is in addition to that. So $1.2 million in this entirety. Yeah. And Mayor Tran wants a raise. I can't, you guys. This is crazy. Okay. So this is the agreement. Now we're going to get into what the city has actually signed on to. So this was all signed and agreed on August 12th. City signed it officially August 16th. Okay, I'm just showing you the signatures. Here's the actual encampment policy. So the purpose of this policy is to ensure that all city personnel and contractors involved in the cleanup of encampments understand the needs and rights of the unhoused individuals and to establish procedures and guidelines. And I'm going to post this. I want you guys to be able to read this as well on your own. The personal property of unhoused peoples must not be treated differently than the property of members of the public. The city staff should use reasonable care when handling, collecting, and retaining the personal property of the unhoused persons. The posting, so a notice, so in addition to the 2 week, 1 week, 3-day notice that's going to go to the lawyers, this is the notice of cleanup. So at every park or every public place that they're going to remove the homeless, they have to provide at least a 72-hour notice. And they have to arrive, the city has to arrive within 3 hours of the beginning time. So if they say that they're going to be there at 7 and they don't show up till 10:01, they have to reissue that notice because they missed that window of opportunity. So this is very interesting. And they have to put it in a prominent place, and they have to discuss with the surrounding unhoused people, this is what's happening. They don't want the police involved, the plaintiff's counsel, and so this is going to be a major endeavor for Public Works because that's who they want out there. Now, do I think that's safe? I don't. I don't understand why you would have unprotected people out there with, it's basically telling people, hey, you're about ready to be moved. There has to be reasonable accommodations. So in anticipation, the ADA coordinator and their designee who's trained and experienced in assisting those who are disabled will be able to assist in providing accommodations. So they have to, an unhoused person's accommodations request may be made in writing on a form provided by the city. The city has to provide some type of accommodation for housing and follow all HIPAA regulations. They have to gather sufficient evidence to determine reasonable accommodations include temporary wheelchair access, temporary walker access, hotel vouchers, transportation assistance, additional time to relocate, assistance with packing, storing, and transporting personal property, assistance with accessing temporary property storage. Staff shall initiate a cleanup only during the time window posted by the notice of cleanups. Upon arrival at the encampment and before commencement of any cleanup, ample time should be provided to occupants of the encampment to retrieve personal property, confirm which items are trash and suitable for disposal. Determination of what constitutes ample time must take individuals' disabilities into consideration. If there's any issues, they can call 911. Prior and during any cleanup, staff should endeavor to proactively offer services to unhoused individuals, ideally coordinated in advance. These interactions are an opportunity to directly engage with unhoused people. And then attended property, here's like a basic layout of how they're going to just get rid of trash. Like I said, I'm going to post this, so you can definitely read this on your own. How they handle safe and unsafe items, the storage, contraband, vehicles, documentation. I mean, they've laid this out for everything. Storage of property. And the city of San Bernardino now is going to become a self-storage facility for people who leave their stuff and then get to come back and get it. Post-seizure hearing. So if they take their property, people have the right to dispute whether or not the property can be given back or however that's going to be handled. The law enforcement component is important. So law enforcement involvement in the encampment process cleanup. It is the city's policy to dedicate city resources to the most appropriate manner possible. Consistent with recent practices, the city seeks to allocate its law enforcement resources to exclusively public safety and policing purposes. Accordingly, the city's goal is to reduce the role of highly qualified and specialized law enforcement personnel in encampment cleanups. The city recognizes that homelessness is not a crime. Accordingly, city staff shall not use homelessness as a basis for detention or law enforcement action. Public Works will be the lead in cleanups, and other departments will participate as necessary to ensure safety of individuals or to provide assistance when called upon. To the extent law enforcement personnel are present at a cleanup, law enforcement personnel shall only run warrants or check for probation or parole status only when required for ordinary law enforcement investigative purposes. The status of homelessness shall not be used as a basis to conduct warrant checks or parole status checks. Consistent with the law enforcement practices and law enforcement personnel shall issue a warning of possible arrest or citation under applicable statutes for trespassing, only when they have probable cause for the specific statutory violation and when necessary to obtain compliance with the law. In such cases, law enforcement personnel shall provide warning and reasonable opportunity to cure the violation. If citation becomes necessary, law enforcement personnel shall document probable cause and identify the specifics. So they're really going in on that, on what PD can and cannot do. And they also, as the city is reaching out to people, they got to provide them some type of non-congregate housing. And so we're going to talk about that real quick, because this is important. So this is the court, this is the policy, this is what we have to implement to get to where we need to be. And what's interesting is where the city takes us tomorrow, because like I said, I went to this meeting on the 26th with the Homeless Solutions. This was a presentation by Gabriella Leon, the Homeless Services Coordinator, and PD was there as well. And there are, through the point in time count, roughly 977 unsheltered people, which we believe is actually a higher number, but we'll go with this 977 unsheltered. This is the city's information, by the way. Gabby said that homelessness in the city has increased 175% since 2017. The city is home to 40% of the entire county's population on homelessness. Now, this is very, very important, because this is the first time I've ever heard a city person actually put this information out there. Because we're talking about now, where are these people going to go? The injunction's lifted. Now you can empty the parks. But shelters in the city are at or are near total capacity. Let me repeat that to you. Shelters in the city are at or are near total capacity. There is an inadequate supply of affordable housing in the city. People, as she said during her presentation, are on wait lists to get in places. Families, seniors, couples. And 2 meetings ago, there was a presentation where they were talking about, oh, we have 458 beds available. And remember, Councilwoman Calvin asked, are those beds specifically designated to the city of San Bernardino, or are they for everybody? Well, they're for everybody. And as Gabby said, they're either full or almost full. And the city only has 110 hotel vouchers. And in order to go and clean up a specific area, you have to be able to offer in this agreement, in this policy, you have to be able to offer some type of alternative housing. They provided she provided some statistics. Now, when I asked her, were these specific to our city? She said no. So these may be county numbers of why people are homeless, but I did want to share that with you. And then the city, as we were looking, the citywide initiative, so they have street outreach, Hope the Mission. But if you guys know that this partnership with Hope the Mission, they're understaffed, and their outreach, they have very limited resources to offer anybody to get out of the parks, to get off of the streets. There's a coast team, which is, we'll look at a Peace PD team, Project Home Key, this navigation center, mobile showers and encampment resolution, Waterman Corridor, which I've never heard of, but we can talk about that. So the COAST team, the Community Outreach and Support Team, is a multidisciplinary crisis response team created to address the increasing number of homelessness and permanent residents that suffer from mental illness. So that's what they go towards. They provide behavioral health services, emergency medical services, and law enforcement response. So they're made up of the San Bernardino County Fire Department, Captain Paul Kramer, and he serves as on the coast too, along with Cooper, which is the dog. And then the team has responded to over 100 calls. So this is where if you're having a crisis, you call 988. That's what's out and available. Then we have the Quality of Life Peace Team. This is the City of San Bernardino Police Department, 8 officers. The core goal is to improve the quality of life of residents, engage local businesses, enforcement, and conduct individual resources or connect. But as we see through the agreement, PD's outreach is supposed to be extremely limited in all of this. The city touted the Lutheran Social Services Home Key, as we saw in the earlier agenda review, that this project coming in about the next 12 to 18 months will create 140 interim housing units. They're not here yet. It'll have on-site health clinic, case management, wraparound services, and then, like I said, be completed, they say, in 2025, but we'll see. There's this thing called the Waterman Corridor Project. I haven't heard of this, the encampment resolution funding. So this is supposed to create housing supported services for 110 unhoused individuals within the 5.2 mile encampment area along Waterman. This is supposed to be permanent housing, and I guess this is an RFP will go out later this year. So I don't know if this has ever been approved by council. I don't remember a Waterman Corridor project. But in the interim, they're going to take 12 people off the street through at the Gibson House with 6 men and 6 women. Not yet, but they're getting there. And then, of course, the Navigation Center is another project that they have been discussing. So what does this all mean? There are, according to the city's numbers, most recent, 977 unhoused people on the streets. There's only 110 hotel vouchers available. The shelters in the city are near or at near capacity. This agreement requires the city to provide an alternative source of housing. So very quickly, if there is anything available, and the vouchers are only good for 14 days, so people will be in a hotel for 14, maybe get extended to 28 days, and then they're going to be back out on the streets. The city itself has not added one bed to take someone off the street since this all began years ago. And the city has to give a 14-day notice to even begin this cleaning up process now that the injunction has been lifted. What I want you to understand is when we're managing these expectations, in everything that we've read, there is actually no plan in place to address homelessness, to get people off the streets, out of the neighborhoods, alleys, washes, sides of the freeways. That is non-existent here in the city, anywhere within the next 18 to 24 months. What we are being given tomorrow is how to move forward with clearing out the parks, which pushes people into the streets. That's not going to work. And I want us to understand that, because what the city is very good at is giving the residents what they ask for on the surface. Clean up the parks, clean up the parks. Okay, they're going to clean the parks like they did when they invested millions of dollars just a year ago. But they're not going to actually address homelessness in a meaningful way. And that's been the contentional issue that you've watched Kimberly Calvin bring forward time and time again. Where's the housing? Where are the beds? Where's the housing? Where are the beds? Where's the immediate emergency housing? None. This is Band-Aids on bullet holes, and it took 10 months to get here. It took the city 10 months to come up with that policy. But it's been years, not just 2, but years of not truly addressing the issue, because all you have to do is, oh, they're dumping homeless people here. Well, how do you account for 5,000 children in the school district who are facing homelessness and their parents? What about those 10,000 people if those kids only have one parent? There's truly an issue at hand. So I wanted to make sure I present this to you. I will be posting all of this for you guys to be able to read on your own, but please understand that we want positive outcomes, but you can only truly get positive outcomes by realistically addressing and approaching a situation. Cleaning out the parks without actually having a plan to house people or treat people is not solving homelessness. So thank you guys for watching. I'll be posting this. Please share it, let everybody know, and then let's see what happens tomorrow at the press conference. So thank you, San Bernardino. Don't forget to vote November 5th for me, Dr. Treasure Ortiz, for the 7th ward. Good night.